we didn't think you'd need access anymore. But isn't it cute? That's what my daughter-in-law said on Christmas morning. She smiled as I opened the little velvet box, the one with the satin ribbon and golden trim. Inside was a keychain, polished silver, elegant, but empty. No keys, no note, no explanation. Just that smile, that rehearsed, camera-ready smile. And everyone, my son, my granddaughter, the cousins, even my sister-in-law, laughed politely like it was an inside joke they all understood. But I didn't. I stared at the empty loop, my fingers tightening around the velvet. I waited for someone to say something, that it was a prank, a mistake, that the real keys would follow. But no. My daughter-in-law leaned over, patted my hand, and whispered loud enough for the room to hear, "We figured you'd enjoy the sentiment more than the access." And then she winked. I felt the blood drain from my face. She had just gifted me a symbol of exclusion, a reminder that I no longer held the keys, not to the house, not to the family, not even to the narrative. If you've ever seen a woman erased from her own family on the one day meant for unity, stay with me till the end. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from, because I know I'm not the only one this has happened to. And if you believe people like us still deserve a voice, hit subscribe. You won't believe what came next. I gave birth to that boy. I raised him with everything I had, every coupon clipped, every flu night, rocked every science project painted at 2 a.m. And now, here I was, sitting in his living room, clutching an accessory to a life I no longer had access to. The room was filled with soft music and the scent of cinnamon. The Christmas tree sparkled with curated perfection, not a single ornament from our past. Not the felt reindeer his kindergarten class made, not the ceramic bell from our first family trip to the Rockies. All replaced, rebranded. My son stood by the fireplace, arm draped gently over his wife's shoulders. She looked radiant, of course, always did. Not a hair out of place, not a word left uncalculated. "I hope you like it," she said sweetly. "Minimalism is so in this year. Minimalism." Yes, she had minimized me completely. What stunned me wasn't just the gift. It was that no one said a word. No one asked if I was okay. No one checked my expression. Even my granddaughter, who used to squeal when I walked in the door, barely looked up from her iPad. It wasn't just a moment. It was a declaration, a public one. I had been uninvited from the future. I slowly placed the keychain back into the box. My hands trembled slightly, but I willed them steady. I smiled, the kind of smile I used when my husband passed, and everyone kept telling me how strong I was. Strong didn't mean unhurt. "Thank you," I said finally, and that's when my daughter-in-law added cheerfully, "Oh, one more thing, we've updated the smart lock. New system. So, no need for old keys anyway. It's voice-activated now. Just for the residents. Just for the residents." The words echoed. I was no longer a resident. Not of the house, not of the family, not of the memory. And yet, I sat there. In the sweater I'd knitted last winter, the one she'd called too sentimental for the family photo, I glanced at my son. His eyes met mine briefly, then drifted away. Coward. Years ago, I would have called him out. I would have pulled him aside, asked if he was okay, if he even recognized the woman next to him. But not today. Today on the couch where I once read bedtime stories, I sat like a stranger, like a seasonal decoration, a prop in someone else's performance. After the gifts, there was brunch. My chair at the table had been moved slightly. Not absent, no, but placed at the edge, near the wall, the folding chair. I sipped my coffee slowly, listening to them talk about their New Year's trip, a family cruise to Cozumel. No one had mentioned it before. My name wasn't in any of the planning. No questions about my schedule. No suggestions about passport renewals. I was invisible until I wasn't. Until the moment when they could perform their kindness. "We didn't want to burden you with the travel," my daughter-in-law explained with faux warmth. "We figured you'd enjoy staying home resting. You know, watching your shows." as if my life had reduced to reruns and recliners. My sister-in-law, sitting beside me, whispered gently, "You know, sometimes you just have to let go." Let go. Of what? My home, my dignity, my place. Or perhaps let go of the idea that I was still part of the family narrative. I took another sip of coffee and let the silence bloom around me. Not angry, not yet, but alert. You see, I didn't survive a husband's slow illness and a mountain of medical debt just to be edited out of the Christmas photo, not to be erased in front of the tree I bought, the fireplace I helped renovate, the baby I once carried through sleepless nights. And yet that's what was happening piece by piece. Let me ask you this. Do you think exclusion always comes loud and angry? Or is it sometimes the softest silence that hurts most? Comment your experience below your story might help someone else see their own. That afternoon I left before dessert. No one stopped me. No one asked if I wanted a to-go plate. Not even my son. I walked to my car, still parked on the far street, since they'd told me the driveway was too full. As I started the engine, I glanced again at the keychain on the passenger seat. The light caught it just right. It glittered. And suddenly, I knew. This wasn't just a message. It was a warning. Something had changed. And they didn't want me inside anymore. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that this small, empty gesture was only the beginning of something much, much bigger. I didn't say anything that night. I placed the keychain in a small drawer beside my bed and tried to tell myself it didn't mean anything, that I was overreacting, that maybe it was just a clumsy modern joke. But something in my bones, that ache in my chest I couldn't explain, told me no. This was planned. The next morning, I reached for my phone to check on the family group chat. It was gone. Not silent, not archived, gone. I searched again, assuming I'd misclicked. But when I opened the app and looked for my son's name, nothing. Just his work number and a silent blank. Had he blocked me? No, that couldn't be. That had to be a glitch. I opened my email. I had sent a short message to ask if they wanted help with the post-Christmas cleanup. No reply. Not even a thanks, Mom. But oddly, when I refreshed my inbox, I noticed a newsletter I never subscribed to: retirement home options in your area. I clicked it by accident. That's when I saw it. At the bottom, in tiny print, it read, "Based on your recent browsing preferences from shared devices." Shared devices. Their Wi-Fi. I'd been using it when visiting. And now, it was tracking me, rerouting me, labeling me. Later that week, I drove to the house with some leftover peppermint bark and a belated gift for my granddaughter. When I rang the doorbell, nothing happened. No chime, no sound. I waited. Then I pulled out my phone and texted my son, "Hey, I'm outside. Just wanted to drop something off." Nothing. A minute passed. Then two. Then the door opened, not wide, not welcoming. Just a crack. My daughter-in-law stood there, a towel over her shoulder, her face flushed like she'd just come from the kitchen. "Oh, I wish you'd called first," she said. I texted, "Ah well, the smart lock has new filters now. It doesn't alert us unless someone's authorized. We're still adjusting." I stood there awkwardly holding a tin of cookies. She looked at the box like it was a bag of bricks. "We're actually in the middle of a deep clean, detoxing the house before the new year. Lots of allergens. Maybe it's best if you drop that off another day." I tried to smile. "It's just peppermint bark." I thought. "Of course," she said, her voice slicing through mine. "You've always liked the old traditions." Old. Not classic. Not nostalgic. Old. She took the tin with 2 fingers, said she'd tell Olivia Grandma came by, and shut the door. No hug, no invitation, just a shut door. I stood there another moment longer, unsure whether to knock again to demand an explanation or just walk away. Instead, I looked up. And that's when I noticed the small metal box above the doorframe. A new camera, the kind that tracks facial data and movement. They'd installed surveillance on the front porch without telling me. I drove home without music. My hands shook on the wheel. I didn't know if I was more humiliated or afraid. Was I being erased or monitored? That night, I reached for my spare key. I still had the one from before the old brass cut I'd carried for over a decade. Just to check, I told myself. Just to make sure the lock hadn't really changed. I waited until dusk, parked down the block, walked up quietly like someone sneaking into their own memories. I inserted the key into the lock and met resistance. The system chirped. A voice, robotic crisp, echoed from the speaker. Unrecognized access attempt. This incident has been logged. I pulled back, heart pounding. Logged. What does that mean? I turned and walked quickly back to my car, scanning the darkened windows for any sign of movement. I never thought I'd feel like a trespasser in a house where I once rocked my newborn son to sleep. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like the locks to your own life were quietly changed behind your back, without warning, without explanation? Drop your story in the comments. I think someone out there might need to read it. 2 days later, my medication organizer looked different. The colors were right. The labels matched. But I noticed something odd. One of my pill compartments, the Thursday morning slot, had capsules I didn't recognize. I always refill them myself. Always. I picked up the odd pill and squinted. The imprint code was unfamiliar. I typed it into an online pill identifier. A mild antihistamine. Nothing dangerous. But I don't take antihistamines. Never have. Why was it there? Had someone been in my house? I looked around the living room. Nothing seemed missing. No signs of a break-in. But something in me felt off, like someone had entered not to steal, but to test. That night, I checked the app, linked to my smart thermostat one my son had installed for me last year. I noticed it had logged multiple adjustments from a remote device over the past 3 days. I hadn't touched it. The temperature had shifted during the night down to 62 degrees, when I always kept it at 70. Was I being monitored through my own devices? I clicked deeper into the settings, and that's when I saw it. A new profile listed under authorized users. Label household admin, Rachel. Rachel, my daughter-in-law. She had remote access to my home, to my comfort, to me. Not even my son was listed as an admin. Just her. I stared at the screen for a long time, my heart pounding. I hadn't been removed violently. I was being rewritten, silently, effortlessly. In every system, every access point, every household setting my presence was being downgraded while hers grew. And worse, I had no proof. Not yet. I returned to their house again for New Year's Day. I brought a bouquet of lilies, my daughter-in-law's favorite, or so she used to say. But when I stepped onto the porch, the lights didn't come on. The motion sensor didn't register me. I stood in silence until the door opened. This time it was my son. He looked tired. Not worn out tired, but emotionally stripped, like someone who'd been made to pick a side and regretted the one he chose. "Hey, Mom," he said quietly. "Now's not really. I just came to say Happy New Year," I said. "And to drop this off." He took the bouquet, stared at it for a moment, then cleared his throat. "Listen, Rachel's really trying to manage the household flow this year. Things are just tight right now. Tight. Space, energy, boundaries. Boundaries. That word again." He handed the bouquet to someone behind the door. I couldn't see who. Probably her. And then he added, "I know you mean well, but maybe less pop-ins. It's not helpful anymore." Not helpful. I raised him. I worked triple shifts to keep him fed. I held him when he sobbed after his first college rejection. And now I was not helpful. I stepped back, said nothing, turned, walked away, and didn't look back. Isn't it strange how the word boundaries can be used like a scalpel? Not to heal, but to cut away the inconvenient. Tell me in the comments, where's the line between healthy space and cruel exile? I returned home, sat down at my desk, opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. Documents, receipts, old copies of my will letters from my husband. I pulled out a dusty notebook I used to keep during his hospice days, a habit of tracking symptoms, meals, visitors. I turned to a blank page and wrote, December 25th, keychain, no keys. December 28th, smart lock changed, camera installed. December 29th, Unknown pill, found in Thursday slot, January 1st. Son said I'm not helpful. I began to build a record, not out of paranoia, but out of necessity, because deep inside I could feel it. They weren't just pushing me away, they were preparing something, and I was about to find out what. I stopped hearing from my granddaughter first. At first I thought it was the usual teenage withdrawal. She'd turned 11 that age, where dolls become screens, and everything Grandma says sounds like a lecture. But this was different. I texted her on a Wednesday. Want to come over for cocoa after school? No reply. I sent a silly sticker. A little animated marshmallow dancing. Still nothing. That weekend I called twice. Straight to voicemail. On the third try, the message tone had changed. Not the usual cheerful family recording. It was a robotic voicemail now. This number is not accepting calls. Strange. I dialed my son. It rang once, then voicemail. I stood in my kitchen, holding the phone like it had betrayed me. The same kitchen where she and I once decorated cookies until the counter looked like a snowstorm. I checked my calendar. We used to have a standing Sunday tradition. She'd come over in the afternoon for tea and crafts. I'd kept it open all year. But for 3 Sundays now, no Olivia. No notice, no cancellation, just absence. I walked into her old corner in my living room, the drawer where she kept her markers, her stickers, her tiny collection of sea glass from when we visited the coast. Empty. Neat. Wiped clean. I hadn't touched it. I never would have dared. So who had... I opened the hall closet. The booster seat was gone. Her pink scarf, the one I'd knitted, missing. Not stored, not moved. Gone. Someone had been here. Someone had erased her presence from my home quietly, efficiently. I checked the spare keys in my drawer again. I used to give them out in case of emergencies. My son had one. My daughter-in-law too, since I trusted her back then. Now I realized I hadn't changed the locks in over 5 years. Had they come in while I was out? Had they cleared her out of my life? The phone rang late that night. It was an unknown number, a landline. I answered, breath caught in my throat. Mom, it was my son. Relief hit first, then anxiety. Is everything okay? A pause. Then he exhaled. I just wanted to say, maybe give Olivia some space. She's got a lot on her plate. The family therapist thinks it's best. Family therapist? Yeah. Rachel's been taking her. And well, some boundaries are healthy, right? Especially after everything with Dad. What does your father have to do with me seeing Olivia? Another pause. We're just trying to create a more structured environment. Structured. I could feel the chill creep into my neck. I'm her grandmother. I know, he said. No one's saying you're not. But maybe right now she needs consistency. And sometimes your presence can be a little overwhelming. Overwhelming. That word again. Just like not helpful. Just like old traditions. They weren't insulting me outright. They were shaving away my dignity with soft corporate words. I swallowed hard. Do you know her favorite storybook? He didn't answer. I asked again. Still nothing. She used to sleep with corduroy under her pillow, I whispered. Did you know that? He cleared his throat. I have to go. Rachel's putting her to bed. And just like that, the line went dead. Have you ever been slowly erased from a child's life 1 minute, your bedtime stories and cocoa, and the next, you're too much? If you've ever lived that heartbreak, I want you to share it. Someone reading might finally feel seen. The following week, I attended church alone. I sat in the 4th pew like always, but something felt exposed. No Olivia next to me playing with her crayon bulletins. No Rachel pretending to nod along with the hymns. No son, not even a late arrival. After service, the pastor approached me gently. We missed your family this Christmas Eve. I forced a smile. They were traveling. A white lie. A protective shell. He nodded. Well, we saw Rachel's Instagram. Looked like a lovely brunch. Brunch. On Christmas Eve. I hadn't been invited. Later that day, I saw the photo, a long table dressed in holly with a golden brown roast in the center. Rachel was smiling next to Olivia, who wore a red velvet dress I'd never seen. My seat, the one I always took next to Olivia at the far end of the table, had a decorative centerpiece instead, as if no one had ever sat there. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just being pushed out emotionally, I was being deleted socially, online, in person, even in photographs. The next day, my friend Lorraine called. She asked if I was okay. Why? Well, she hesitated. Rachel posted something cryptic. Said, letting go of old weights in 2025. Some folks thought it was about you. I laughed, a dry, exhausted sound. Funny, I said, I don't remember ever being invited into her new year. I began to question everything. Was I remembering wrong? Had I missed something? Maybe I was too intense, too clingy, too stuck in my ways. I sat on the couch and tried to recall the last time Olivia had smiled at me. Maybe I'd missed a birthday. Maybe I forgot to text back once. Maybe I deserved this. I spiraled, doubted myself, gaslighted myself. That's the cruelest part of emotional exile. They don't need to shout. They just need to let silence do the work. Have you ever started to doubt your own memory? Because someone made you question if you even mattered? Tell me below, how did you find your truth again? By mid-January, I stopped trying to call, stopped trying to text. I told myself I was giving them space. But deep down, I was building a dam to hold back the rage and the grief. One day, I went to the grocery store and bumped into Olivia's teacher. She looked surprised. Oh, I didn't realize you still lived nearby. Still lived nearby. I'd never moved. Why, I asked. She glanced sideways, clearly uncomfortable. It's just, Olivia mentioned you'd moved away, that you weren't part of things anymore. I stood frozen in the dairy aisle, holding a carton of milk, like it was the only solid thing left. She said that. The teacher hesitated. Kids repeat what they hear. I nodded, smiled, walked away, and didn't buy the milk. That night, I opened a folder on my computer, labeled it Disappearance Log. I started entering details. Dates, words, silences, screenshots, voicemails, changes in behavior, names. If they were trying to disappear me, to isolate me, until I believed I had no place, no voice, no identity, then I would make sure my truth lived somewhere. Even if only on a hard drive, because I didn't know what was coming next. But I knew this. I had just become a ghost in a story I helped write, and I wasn't going to fade quietly. The moment that changed everything didn't arrive with thunder. It came with tea. I was in my kitchen on a Thursday afternoon, trying to distract myself by organizing my pantry. I'd decided to alphabetize my teas, something Olivia used to tease me for. Grandma, you're the only person who puts chamomile before chai just because of spelling. I smiled at the memory, and then I cried, silently, without fuss, until the kettle whistled and someone knocked at the door. 3 soft knocks. I hesitated. No one ever came by unannounced anymore. When I opened the door, I froze. Standing there, bundled in a long brown coat and bright blue scarf, was Marianne, my old neighbor, the one who'd moved out of state 2 years ago. Hello, Ruth, she said, as if it hadn't been 30 months and a dozen holidays. Marianne, what? I'm only in town for a few days, she said, smiling warmly. Can I come in? I blinked. Of course, of course. She stepped inside and sighed. Same smell. You always did have the coziest kitchen. I set the kettle back on and pulled out 2 mugs. What brings you back? She didn't answer at first. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. I wasn't sure if I should tell you this, she said softly. But I thought, maybe you need to know. I stared at her. What is it? I volunteer with a legal clinic now. We sometimes review elder care contracts. About 6 months ago, something crossed my desk. I didn't recognize the names at first. But then I saw yours. She handed me the envelope. I opened it. Inside was a copy of a document, a power of attorney transfer form. It had my name on it. Except I had never signed it. Not that I could remember. It listed my son and Rachel, my daughter-in-law, as joint agents over my medical and financial decisions. It says I appointed them voluntarily, I whispered. Marianne nodded grimly. But the signature, it's not consistent. We flagged it. but it was filed quietly. No court case. Just a notary who wasn't questioned. My hands trembled. I don't remember this. I never gave them power over me. Ruth, she said gently, has anything odd happened lately? Pills access being taken, isolation. I looked at her, and for the first time in weeks I broke. Told her everything. The keychain, the smart lock, the ghosting, the voicemail about boundaries, and Rachel's voice always polite, always composed, slicing pieces of my life off with surgical efficiency. When I finished, Marianne placed her hand over mine. You're not imagining it. Let me pause here for a second and ask, have you ever felt like the people closest to you were quietly constructing a world without you in it? Not through violence, but paperwork. Words. Silence. Tell me in the comments because you're not alone. That night, I searched every drawer, every folder in my home. I found a file labeled Ruth Medical. Inside were several forms I didn't remember signing, medication authorizations, hospital directives, all listing Rachel's number as the primary contact. Not mine, not even my son's, hers. I pulled out the copy of my will. It had been updated, apparently. The signatures looked shaky. Too shaky. Had I been pressured? Was I medicated? Confused? I couldn't remember. That scared me more than anything else. I called Marianne the next morning. I think I need help, I said quietly. You do, she agreed. But not the kind they think you do. She gave me the name of a legal consultant, discreet, experienced in elder law. I made the appointment. When I arrived, the office was quiet and warm. No sterile buzz. No intimidating staff. Just a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a gentle voice. Ms. Ruth, she greeted me. I've reviewed the copies. You're not alone. Unfortunately, these situations are becoming more common. I blinked. You mean this happens to other people? She nodded. Every day. Elder isolation. Coercion. Slowly shifting control through small legal tools. Sometimes out of malice, sometimes out of fear, but always wrong if done without consent. We spoke for an hour. She asked me for dates, documents, names. She listened carefully, typing notes, asking for clarification only when necessary. When we were done, she sat back. Here's what I think, she said calmly. They're slowly repositioning you as someone incapable. Not overtly, that would trigger suspicion, but subtly. No keys, no access. Controlled communication. Altered medications. Emotional destabilization. I was speechless. You need to document everything. Starting now, no assumptions, no memory gaps. We'll build a timeline. We'll check camera footage if we can. And if this proceeds, we'll file. File. Against my own family? Her eyes didn't blink. Against anyone who treats you as property instead of a person. I swallowed hard. I don't want revenge, I said. I just want to exist. She nodded. And you will. If you discovered your rights were being chipped away piece by the people you trusted most, would you confront them or wait? Would you risk everything or stay silent to preserve the illusion of peace? I want to hear your thoughts. This isn't just a story, it's a warning. That night, I looked in the mirror for a long time. I didn't see an old woman. I saw a survivor. Not someone waiting for permission, but someone preparing for a fight. I pulled out a fresh notebook and wrote across the first page, I will not disappear. And as I wrote, I began to breathe again. I didn't know what Rachel was planning next, but whatever it was, I wouldn't be caught off guard again. I became someone else in February. Not angry, not broken, but sharp, focused. I wasn't going to cry in the shower anymore. I wasn't going to scroll through old photos hoping to feel seen. I was going to watch, listen, record, and wait. My first real lead came from a surprising place, the recycling bin. I was taking out trash one morning when I noticed a glint of something metallic sticking out from an envelope wedged between flattened Amazon boxes. Curious, I tugged it free. A tiny USB drive, labeled in neat handwriting, video log external storage. At first, I thought it had to be someone else's, maybe dropped by the neighbors. But something in my gut told me otherwise. I plugged it into my old laptop. There were 5 files, each dated, each labeled by room: living room, cam 1, MP4, kitchen, audio, log 2, WAV, and so on. The footage was grainy, but clear enough and instantly familiar. It was my house. Not theirs, mine. Camera angles I didn't recognize installed in places I never consented to. Some were high up in corners, others were embedded in vents. I opened the first video. It showed my living room at night, time stamped 3 weeks ago. In it, Rachel walked in wearing gloves. She didn't look around nervously. She looked methodical. She carried a small pouch, opened it, and placed something in the medicine drawer. Then she adjusted one of my thermostat panels, paused, looked straight into the hidden lens as if checking it, and walked out. I couldn't breathe. She'd been in my home. Not once. More than once. And worse, she knew about the cameras. She was the one who installed them. But then why discard the USB? Had she meant to destroy it? Had someone else placed it in the bin, someone trying to help? I didn't know yet, but now I had proof. That night, I opened the second file, an audio clip. 2 voices, my son and Rachel. She's already starting to forget things. That Thursday mix-up, perfect example. Exactly. We'll adjust her meds slowly. Nothing drastic. We just need documentation. And patience. What about Olivia? She already believes Grandma's not well. A few more missed calls and she'll stop asking. I stared at the screen, shaking. This wasn't care. This was erasure by design. They weren't reacting to anything. They were creating the conditions. If you had evidence that your own family was manufacturing your decline, not waiting for you to age, but pushing you toward it, what would you do? Would you confront them now? Or wait? Share your thoughts, because this is happening to more people than you think. I printed everything. The logs, the clips. I organized them chronologically and emailed encrypted backups to myself, my lawyer, and anonymously to a close friend I trusted implicitly. Then I bought something I never thought I'd need: a hidden audio recorder. I wore it in a brooch, a pearl pendant my husband once gave me for our 30th anniversary. I wore it when I visited the house next. Rachel had invited me, a rare gesture. Come by for tea, she'd said in a text. Let's make peace. I didn't buy it, but I went. Her house smelled like pine and lemon. The air was still. Too still. She wore cream. Her lipstick was perfect. I'm glad you came, she said. I want to move forward. We sat at the marble island. She poured jasmine tea. I know things have been tense, she began, but we all want what's best for Olivia. For you. For me, she smiled. Of course. That's why we've been looking at assisted options. You know, places that offer more support, less responsibility. I nodded slowly, like homes. She tilted her head, like communities. She used that word the same way she'd once used boundaries as a weapon dipped in honey. And you'd be involved in the decisions? She blinked. As your co-agent, yes. Legally, it makes sense. It's what George would have wanted. I leaned in. What I want doesn't count. That made her pause. And then, with a sip of tea, she answered, only if you're still in a position to want clearly. My heart pounded, but I smiled, because the brooch was recording everything. Back home, I uploaded the audio. Her voice, her tone, her implications, all documented. My lawyer called me the next day. You've built a strong case, she said. But we need one more thing: proof of intent to commit fraud or coercion. That's the legal lever. That's when I remembered the church. I pulled out an old purse I hadn't touched in months, the one I'd used last spring when Rachel and I attended that service together. Inside was a folded paper, a copy of a signature page from a medical directive, with my name and her handwriting. Only problem: the date on the form was a day I'd been admitted for minor surgery, under sedation. I couldn't have signed anything that day. I looked at the signature. It was a near-perfect match, but the R in my name, the loop, was wrong. Too low. She'd forged it, and now I could prove it. If someone forged your name, not to steal money, but to control your life, how far would you go to take that power back? Tell me below, what would be your next move? I brought the papers to my lawyer. This, she said, tapping the signature is what we needed. Forgery on a medical directive, especially one made under sedation, is serious. In California, that's elder fraud. It carries both civil and criminal consequences. Will Olivia know? I asked, voice shaking. We'll protect her, she said. But she'll need the truth. I nodded. No more waiting. No more hoping. This wasn't about family anymore. This was about survival. But just as I began to prepare my case, a letter arrived. Not certified, no return address. Inside a single sheet, typed, cold. Dear Ruth, for your well-being and peace of mind, effective immediately, you are no longer to have unsupervised contact with Olivia. Any violations will result in legal action. Rachel and counsel. She wasn't waiting to lose. She was trying to strike first. I stood frozen in my foyer. And then I whispered to myself with calm resolve, I hope she's ready to explain that in court. You think I'm the villain? Because I gave her a keychain with no keys. Because I smiled while doing it. Because I whispered things that hurt in rooms filled with people too polite to intervene. But no one ever asks what I saw first, what I survived, what I learned the hard way. Let me tell you what she never says. The first time I met Ruth, his mother, I was 24. I'd worn my nicest blouse, the one without the loose threads, and shoes that blistered the sides of my heels, because I needed her to think I was polished. I was in love with her son. I thought that meant I had a chance. But when she opened the door, she didn't hug me. She looked me up and down, head to toe, then smiled thinly. So you're the one. She never called me Rachel. Not that day. Not for months. Just the one. The one who wasn't like the others. The one who didn't have a trust fund, didn't graduate from Wellesley, didn't know which salad fork went where. She never raised her voice. She didn't have to. She criticized through compliments. Oh, you chose a bold lipstick that's confident. This casserole's very rustic. You two live in a charming little starter neighborhood, don't you? I laughed them off at first. But inside I shrank. Because I knew that tone. I'd heard it growing up from my own mother. When I got an A, she asked why it wasn't an A+. When I brought home a scholarship, she asked why it wasn't to Yale. My entire life had been a contest I didn't remember entering with no prize at the end. And when I finally found someone who made me feel seen, safe enough, Ruth was there, watching, judging, chipping away. Let me ask you something. Do you think trauma always looks loud, or can it come in quiet tones, slow erosion, smiling disapproval? If you've felt it, you'll understand. Tell me in the comments. When did you first realize someone's niceness was just control in disguise? I tried. I invited her into everything. Brunches, vacations, doctor appointments when Olivia was born. But she always came with the same energy. A sigh. A correction. A suggestion masked as concern. When Olivia cried, she'd say, try holding her this way. That's what we used to do. When Olivia got sick, she'd ask, did the pediatrician go to a top school George's did? It wasn't overt. It was ownership. Of memory, of motherhood, of my family. The shift happened gradually. One day, Olivia had a nightmare. Ruth came in, cradled her, and sang an old lullaby. Olivia slept. It was sweet, touching even, until Olivia asked for Grandma's song the next night. And the next. Until she cried when I sang my own. It wasn't Ruth's fault, not entirely, but it opened a fear I hadn't been able to name until then. What if I disappeared? What if I became the background, the mother who carried and nursed and planned and stayed up late, while someone else wore the halo? So I took steps. I didn't think of them as cruel. I thought of them as protective, limiting visits, adjusting schedules, resetting boundaries. Olivia needed consistency, I told myself. She needed me. And sometimes to secure the future you deserve, you have to prune the past. I found the legal templates online. I didn't forge them, not fully. I guided them. I handed Ruth the medical directive during a flu appointment when she was tired and distracted. I said it was a standard update. I watched her sign without reading. I wasn't proud of it. But I remembered every time she'd overridden me. Every time she'd said, "Oh, Rachel, don't fuss, she's just a child," when I tried to instill rules. Every time she swooped in like a heroine while I stood there holding the unpaid bills and unread thank you notes from daycare. So yes, I took back control. Would you judge someone for protecting their family, even if it meant silencing another voice in the process? Where do we draw the line between harm and self-defense? I want your take. Drop it in the comments below. The cameras, installed after Olivia said Grandma gave her candy behind our backs, even with her allergy. Ruth said it was organic, said she forgot. But my daughter could have ended up in the ER. So yes, I put in surveillance. To track, to confirm. Not to destroy her, just to make sure she stayed in her lane. But the problem with Ruth is, she doesn't have lanes. She believes that being the mother of the man gives her permanent VIP access. That once you've given birth, you never have to give up the microphone. And I wasn't going to live in someone else's encore. I watched her change after Christmas. She got quieter. Started showing up with that brooch, the one she hadn't worn in years. I knew she was recording, watching me back. And part of me didn't care, because if she wanted to play chess, I'd already learned how to win quietly. The day she found that USB, I planted it. Let her think she was gaining ground. Let her think she had leverage. You see, I learned long ago people like Ruth need to believe they're winning to feel alive. So I gave her a little rope, and when the time came, I planned to pull. She thinks I'm afraid of her going to court. I'm not. Let her file. Let her speak. Let her tell her story. Because I've been writing mine this whole time. And I've got proof too. Not forged. Not hidden. Just reframed. Emails, voicemails, comments she made in jest that I've documented, shaped carefully with context. It's amazing what a little patience and digital footprint can do. So let her push. I've already built the full net and it's under me, not her. Do you believe every story has two sides? Or do some actions cross a line that can't be explained? Comment below. Who do you believe and why? My daughter will grow up strong. Not by accident, not by chance, because I curated the environment. Ruth wanted to haunt the home with her traditions. I wanted to raise a daughter free from quiet judgment. So yes, I cut her out. But only because I've lived the damage a woman like her can cause when no one says enough. And if she thinks I'm done, if she thinks the court will save her, then she doesn't understand the real game at all. I didn't know the barista's name. Not really. Just that he wore his cap backwards, always whistled off key, and remembered how I liked my tea, strong, no sugar. His name tag said Dev, and for 3 months he'd watched me come in every Tuesday at 3 p.m., sit at the corner window seat and sip in silence while scribbling in my notebook. But one day in early March, Dev did something different. He slid me my tea with a folded napkin tucked beneath the cup. At first I thought it was a receipt. Then I saw the words written in neat block letters. "Are you okay?" I looked up, startled. He wasn't smiling this time. "Just asking," he said, barely audible. I nodded, unsure what he meant. But later, as I was throwing away my cup, he called out softly, "I've seen you cry here. 3 times. I'm not prying, but I've also seen someone come in after you. A woman. Same time, same booth. She asks about you. Every week." I froze. "Did she say her name?" He hesitated. "Rachel." I felt my knees weaken. "She came here," I whispered. He nodded. "Usually on Thursdays. She asks what you write about. If you ever mention Olivia, if you seem off." She said that. He looked ashamed. She tipped big. But it started to feel wrong. I stood there, stunned. Rachel had followed me here to my sanctuary. She was collecting data. Or worse, manipulating how others saw me. She ever record anything I asked quietly? Dev hesitated, then nodded again. She left her phone on the table once, camera facing the window. "Let me ask you something. Have you ever found out someone was shadowing your life, not for love or care, but to build a case against you? Tell your story below. Someone needs to hear it." I called my lawyer the next morning. "We have a third-party witness," I said. "Not family, not biased." She was intrigued. "Does he know what's at stake?" "He does now." Dev agreed to provide a statement. In it, he detailed the number of times Rachel came in alone, Her questions about my mental state, the phone she left on accidentally, comments she made to staff about me being confused lately. My lawyer was thrilled. Third-party observation, she said. This shifts the credibility. It's no longer she said, she said. This is neutral ground. And in cases of elder coercion, that changes everything. We filed an affidavit, submitted it alongside the video evidence, the forged signature, and the audio from the brooch. A date was set. Family mediation phase 1. But before I could exhale, something else dropped. Shh. I was returning from the post office when I found a note stuck in my screen door. No envelope. Just a folded page from a spiral-bound notebook. In sharp handwriting. I hope you're enjoying your performance. It won't end the way you think. There was no name, but I didn't need one. Rachel was done whispering. Now she was warning. A few days later, I got a message from a woman named Maribel Olivia's dance instructor. I don't mean to intrude, she wrote, but something felt off. Olivia's no longer in class. Rachel told us there was a family situation and implied that you were the cause of it. She sent screenshots of their conversation. Rachel had described me as emotionally unpredictable and likely to stir confusion for Olivia. She even warned Maribel not to allow me to attend any upcoming recitals. I hadn't even known there was one. I was being preemptively erased everywhere. Do you believe that reputations can be stolen? Not with lies, but with careful suggestion, passive implication, and social positioning. Tell me below, how did you reclaim yours if you ever had to? That night, I received a call from George's old co-worker, Ron. We hadn't spoken in years. He said he'd seen something strange while reviewing old HR files for pension updates. Apparently, 6 months after George died, Rachel submitted a notarized beneficiary redirection form. The signature, mine. But I had no memory of it. And I was still grieving then. Ron offered to forward the file. He added quietly, "If it was forged." I'm sorry. I should have asked. My hands trembled as I opened the PDF. The handwriting was close, but again the R loop in my name was just slightly off. Rachel had been building a case for a long time, not just to isolate me, but to redirect everything. Not just Olivia, not just control, assets. I took a walk through the park the next morning. I needed to breathe. While on the bench, a woman sat beside me, mid-50s, soft curls, red coat. You don't know me, she said, but I know who you are. I turned. She smiled gently. I used to be Rachel's therapist. My chest tightened. Excuse me? I can't share details, she said quickly. But I can say this, some people don't want healing. They want leverage. I stared at her, stunned. She nodded once. You're not crazy. You're not alone. And you're not weak. Then she walked away. I returned home and opened my notebook, added 3 names to the third-person list. Dev, Cafe Witness. Maribel, Recital Gatekeeper. Ron, Beneficiary Oversight. I didn't just have proof anymore. I had people. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was fighting a shadow war alone. But then came the real twist. That night, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject Olivia's journal. I found this in her backpack. I'm the after-school assistant. She asked me to keep it safe from her mom. Attached was a scan of 1 page. In shaky, childlike handwriting. I miss Grandma. I don't know why Mommy gets mad when I say that. Mommy said Grandma is sick in the head. But Grandma always remembers my birthday. I want to go back to her house. It smells like stories. I covered my mouth and sobbed. Because now I knew. The one person I thought was lost, the one person I feared had been turned, still remembered me, still wanted me, still believed in me. And that changed everything. If a child's words confirmed your worst fear, that someone was using them as leverage against you, what would you do? How far would you go to protect that bond? Let's talk in the comments. Rachel had tried to erase me, but in trying so hard, she left too many fingerprints, too many cracks, too many people watching. And now I was ready, because I wasn't just a grieving widow anymore. I was a mother, a grandmother, a witness. And soon I'd be the one standing at the front of the room. Holding the truth in my hands, I chose Olivia's school fundraiser. Not because I wanted to cause a scene, not because I wanted revenge, but because for once I wanted them to see. Them, the neighbors who had grown cold. Them, the extended family who had gone quiet. Them, the people who used to call me Ruthie, and now barely nodded in grocery store aisles. It was a public event. Rachel would be there, my son too. And Olivia, if I was lucky, would finally see that I hadn't vanished. I didn't wear anything loud, just my navy coat, a pearl pin, and my brooch now upgraded to a high-resolution recorder. My lawyer had advised, don't yell, don't accuse. Ask questions, they'll answer. Let them reveal who they are. So I waited, watched the tables fill. Silent auctions, laughter, music. Rachel laughing beside the PTA president. My son in khakis holding a clipboard, barely looking up. And then Olivia dressed in a sunflower yellow dress, hair braided cheeks, flushed with excitement. My heart ached. She hadn't seen me yet. Rachel saw me first. Her expression barely flickered, just a twitch in the jaw. She whispered something to my son and started walking toward me. Ruth, she said, as if we were old friends at a coffee shop. Didn't expect you here. No, I said. You wouldn't. She tilted her head. This is a school event. Olivia's in a good place. Let's not confuse things. I agree, I said, voice level. Let's be honest. That's clearer for everyone. She narrowed her eyes, sensing the shift. Then I turned, walked up to the microphone on stage and tapped it twice. The crowd turned. Murmurs rose. Hi, I said, steady. My name is Ruth Hammond. Some of you know me as Olivia's grandmother. The silence thickened. I'd like to say a few words. Rachel stepped forward. This isn't the time, Ruth. My voice stayed calm. But it's the place, isn't it? The place where our children learn what's right. A few parents nodded slowly. I continued. I want to thank the volunteers, the teachers, the aides, especially those who care when no one is watching. My eyes found Dev in the back, standing beside a donation table, his eyes wide. And I want to thank the people who still ask questions, even when told not to. I turned to Rachel. Because silence isn't always kindness, and sometimes silence hides harm. My son stood frozen. Rachel's face flushed. Let me ask you, if you were in that room, hearing a grandmother speak, while the daughter-in-law watched with narrowed eyes, whose side would you lean toward? Speak your truth in the comments. I read every word. I pulled out a single folder, held it up. Over the past few months, I've been monitored, silently disinvited, told I was confused, overwhelming, and no longer helpful. A few parents exchanged glances. I've been locked out not just from homes and holidays, but from my own granddaughter's life. Rachel crossed her arms. I opened the folder. These are not opinions. These are documents. I stepped down from the stage, passed the folder to the principal, a stern woman in a maroon pantsuit. Inside, the forged medical directive, the time-stamped footage from my home, the audio from the cafe, Olivia's journal page. The principal read slowly. Her expression changed. Then I handed her the final envelope sealed. This, I said, is the beneficiary change form submitted 6 months after my husband's death, with a signature I don't remember giving. Rachel stepped forward. That's enough. But the principal raised her hand. I'd like to review this, she said, in private. Rachel's jaw clenched. You're making a scene, she hissed at me. I smiled. I'm making a record. Later, I found Olivia standing near the refreshment table. She saw me, hesitated, then ran forward. Grandma. She wrapped her arms around my waist. Rachel stormed over, but Olivia pulled back first. Why don't I see you anymore? She asked. I knelt, met her eyes. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, I said gently. But I'm still here. I've always been. Olivia looked at her mother. Can I come over this weekend? Rachel was silent. The principal stood beside her, now arms crossed, folder in hand. You'll want to speak with your attorney, she said quietly. Rachel paled. Back home, I sat on my porch with tea and a blanket, the sun setting soft wind against the screen door. My phone buzzed. A text. From Rachel. You're not going to win. I didn't reply. Because it wasn't about winning. It was about being seen. Would you confront your enemy publicly? or wait for the court to speak? When's the right time to raise your voice? Let me know below. This isn't just about one family. It's about how we treat the people who raised us. I leaned back in my chair, exhaled. The first battle was over. But the war was about to hit the courtroom. And the truth, the one Rachel had spent a year suppressing, was about to be read aloud by a lawyer, under oath, with witnesses. And there was one line in the file that even I hadn't seen until just now. A single check mark next to the phrase, request for full conservatorship. It was held in a modest courtroom in Sacramento. Just a hearing, just mediation, just paperwork. That's what the letter had said. But I knew better. Because when someone checks the box labeled request for full conservatorship, it's not just anything. It's a quiet attempt to take your voice, your name, your life. My lawyer, Dana, had prepped me for everything. She'll show up calm, she said. Controlled, maybe even apologetic. She'll act like this is for your protection. But you have the truth, and truth, when properly documented, is louder than charm. We walked into the hearing room together. Rachel was already seated. So was my son. He couldn't meet my eyes. Olivia wasn't there. A bailiff closed the door gently. The commissioner entered. Nameplate read Honda J. Albright. Female, mid-60s, no-nonsense air. She adjusted her glasses and looked at the file. Mrs. Hammond, she said to Rachel, you've requested full conservatorship over your mother-in-law's person and estate. Rachel stood. Yes, Your Honor. We're concerned about declining faculties, isolation, mismanagement of medication, and emotional volatility. And who provided evidence of this? Rachel gestured to her folder. Incident logs, voicemails, a few notes from Olivia's school, and statements from our therapist. I could see Dana smirk slightly beside me. Your Honor? Dana said, rising, if I may submit our opposing file. The judge gestured. Dana handed her the thick envelope we'd compiled. Inside, you'll find time-stamped footage from the respondent's home audio recordings of Ms. Hammond's unsolicited comments, a signed statement from a third-party witness who observed surveillance behavior at a local cafe, and she paused for emphasis, forensic handwriting analysis on several legal documents allegedly signed by my client while under sedation. The judge blinked. Forged. Your Honor, Dana said calmly, we're alleging elder fraud, misrepresentation, and strategic isolation. Let me ask you, if you were this judge, looking at two folders, one polished and vague, the other filled with proof and timestamps, whose story would you believe? Tell me below, I'm listening. The judge began reading. The room was silent. Rachel sat perfectly still, her lips slightly pursed. At one point, the judge held up Olivia's journal scan. Is this real? She asked. Rachel didn't speak. My son shifted uncomfortably. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Hammond, she said, in your own words, do you feel safe? I nodded slowly. I do now. And prior to this, I felt erased. She looked at me for a long moment, then turned to Rachel. In your filings, there's a note stating that the respondent frequently forgets dates and names. Yet I see no medical diagnosis on file, no cognitive assessments, no reports from a doctor. Why is that? Rachel cleared her throat. We didn't want to traumatize her further, Dana interjected. Your Honor, what they didn't want was a real evaluation, because Ruth's mental clarity is what ruins their narrative. The judge raised a brow. And is that a narrative you believe was built deliberately? Dana didn't flinch. Absolutely. Layer by layer. They isolated her changed locks, misrepresented her to social circles, and even attempted to alter legal control over her assets. Rachel's voice rose. We were trying to help. She's paranoid. She records conversations. She records, Dana said evenly, because she had to. Then came the turning point. The judge leaned back, folded her hands. In accordance with the California Elder Abuse and Dependent Adult Civil Protection Act, she said slowly, the court has an obligation to protect individuals from financial and emotional manipulation. Rachel stiffened. Therefore, the judge continued the petition for full conservatorship is denied. My son dropped his head into his hands. Rachel's jaw trembled, but she started. The judge held up a hand. This court is also referring this case to the Office of the Adult Protective Services and the District Attorney's Office for review under suspected elder coercion and document fraud. That moment, that single sentence, was the sound of justice landing. Was that outcome fair? Should Rachel face legal consequences, or has the damage already been done? What would you rule if it were your family? Comment below, because this is where real debate begins. As we left the courthouse, Dana touched my arm. "You did it." "I didn't want to win," I whispered. "I just didn't want to vanish." She nodded. "Still, you set precedent. Not just for yourself. For every woman who's ever been quietly written out." That evening, I received an email from an address I hadn't seen in years. It was from George's cousin, Lorraine. She'd always been distant. Rachel's favorite. The subject line, "I owe you an apology." Inside. Ruth, I believed her. I believed every word. The way she spoke, so polished, so calm. But now, I see it. I see you. And I'm so sorry. P.S. I still have something that belongs to you. George left it with me, said it was for if anything ever happened. Do you want me to send it? I read the line again. George left it with me. He knew. Before he passed, before Rachel began her quiet campaign, he had known. And he had prepared. If your late husband left behind a secret, a sealed file, a truth he never told, would you want to know? Even if it reopened old wounds, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about legacy and unfinished justice. I replied with one word, yes, because no matter what was in that envelope, it was mine now, to open, to finish, to understand the final piece of why everything began. It arrived 2 days later. A plain manila envelope. No return address, no embellishment. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note in George's unmistakable print. If she ever tries to erase, you use this. Just that. No dear Ruth. No explanation. Just a line written by a man who'd seen the fault lines long before I admitted they were real. I held the flash drive in my palm, afraid to plug it in. Was this his final goodbye? His confession? His secret? When I finally opened the files, I gasped. There were recordings, audio diaries, George had made during his final year during the nights I thought he'd been sleeping or too weak to speak. In them he talked about her. Rachel's smart, too smart, and cold. I don't know when it started, but she's pushing Ruth out slowly. I see it in the way she offers to handle things, in the way she speaks to Olivia about who's allowed to be in her life. If I'm gone, I fear Ruth will be left surrounded by people who say it's for her own good, while stealing everything from under her. I'm putting everything I can in writing. But if that fails, and if she ever brings you to court, play this. Ruth, I trust you. Don't doubt your mind, or your memories, or your worth. I sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down my face. He'd known. He'd seen it. And still he'd loved her, loved me enough to leave this behind. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. It wasn't about courtrooms or power. It was recognition. Has anyone ever left you something that reminded you who you were? Not just to them, but to yourself. Tell me in the comments, what's the legacy you're holding on to? I didn't submit the files to court. I didn't need to. Justice had already landed. Rachel's petition was dead. Her narrative fractured. The community had seen the truth in Olivia's writing in the witnesses in her own words. And my granddaughter, she came back. Slowly at first, supervised visits, cautious smiles. Then the day came when Olivia walked through my door, dropped her backpack on the floor and said, "Do you still have hot chocolate?" That was it. No drama, no speeches. Just home. I didn't demand an apology from Rachel. She sent one over email. Polished, legalistic. I didn't respond. Forgiveness isn't always an invitation. Sometimes it's a decision you make for yourself, not for them. And I chose to forgive quietly without forgetting. Because forgetting is how I got here in the first place. 6 months later, I stood in front of a small audience at a local community center. Title of the event: Inheritance isn't always money, it's also memory. I spoke about boundaries, about quiet erasure, about why we must witness each other before it's too late. And afterward, 3 women came up to hug me. 2 of them were crying. "You said what I couldn't," one whispered. "You made me feel real again," said another. That's what power looks like. Not shouting, not revenge, but reclamation. Have you ever rebuilt your power after being broken down, not through rage, but through clarity? Tell your story. Let others read it. We grow stronger when we grow together. Last week, I opened a small Etsy shop. Hand-knit scarves, homemade tea blends, tiny clay birds. I call it stories that stay. Because no matter what people try to erase, some stories stay. Because someone chooses to tell them. And now that someone is me, Olivia spent her birthday with me this year. We baked cake from scratch. She asked if she could hang the photo of her, me and George in her room. I said, only if you don't mind dusting it. She rolled her eyes. Teenagers. I sit now in my reading nook. Window cracked. Warm mug in hand. Sunlight on the journal I'm writing in. Not a log of what was done to me, but a record of who I became afterward. If you're still watching, still here, I want to say this. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. You are not alone. And most importantly, you are not invisible. Not anymore. Have you ever witnessed someone rise not by destroying others, but by rediscovering themselves? If so, share that story below. We all need reminders of what quiet courage looks like. And if you want to hear more real, raw, emotional stories, like this one's stories about truth family and reclaiming dignity, hit subscribe. I've got more to tell. And they're just getting started. Because this story may have ended, but I've only just begun.